All right, welcome back to another region review. I do these reviews every single week, different days of the week depending on which region I'm doing. It has been quite a while since I've done this, of course, because I was away for a little while. But now that we are into the Christmas break, the season is on hold for a little bit. I'm going to be going through my week 3 review. Some teams have started their week 4, but I'm just going to be acknowledging this as week 3, kind of the halfway point of the season thus far. So what I'm going to be doing, as my previous reviews did as well, I'm going to be starting off with the upper division, going through each of the past matches since my last review, which is going to be a little bit more than intended because it has been such a long time since I did my review. Taking a look at the updated standings, then taking a look at some stats, whether that be heroes, team-based, or player-based, and trying to start a little bit of a discussion about maybe some teams that aren't doing so well, some teams that have had very surprising results, stuff like that. And then doing the same thing for the lower division. So yeah, jumping into it, starting off with our matches all the way back on December 11th. Again, this is going to be kind of encompassing the past 2 weeks of matches roughly, just because it has been such a long time since I made this a video like this for Western Europe. Starting off with Liquid and Team Tickles. Liquid take this series 2-1 over Tickles, a team that I've been very, very surprised about. I can say this about both of them, really. I mean, I really like the changes that Liquid made. It was unfortunate to see that roster that was together for such a long time, featuring Koikva and Taiga, kind of disband a little bit, but they do pick up some great players from Team Secret, who notably has been probably one of the strongest and most consistent teams in all of Dota for the past little while, pretty much since the start of the pandemic, with the changes that they made to their roster after TI9. And yeah, Liquid has looked really good, but again, another one that I'm surprised about is Team Tickles. Even in this series that Team Tickles ends up losing, they kept it close. It was a very competitive series. It goes to 3 games, and they're pulling ahead kind of in the standings a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but they're winning the series that they need to be winning. They're beating all the teams near the bottom. They're staying competitive with the teams at the top, and who knows, with the way that the region is looking right now, this is an incredibly volatile region. They could end up in a major slot, which is going to be huge, especially with just how huge some of these teams in this division are and how many fans are behind each and every one of these teams. Seeing an underdog like Tickles of making it to the first major would be pretty incredible. Following that, on the same day, we had Team Secret versus Tundra. This was Tundra's first faulting of their season. Up to that point, they were 2-0, and there's not really too much I can say about this. It was a very close series, but it just, with Team Secret, it just feels like you're getting a different team every single time you watch them. It has felt like they've had a really hard time kind of having an identity for themselves ever since they made the changes by bringing in Ice, and Sumail. They, of course, had that disastrous opening series against OG, and then since then, they've been hot or cold. It's kind of been weird watching Team Secret, and so I think Tundra just kind of met Secret at kind of the wrong time. Secret was looking pretty good in this series, and Tundra takes a bit of a falter. Following that, on December 14th, we had Alliance versus Cool Guys, the headline match of the 2 of the 3 bottom teams in the division, but Alliance does come away with the win, which is huge for them. If Alliance wants to make it to this major, they have to be able to beat some of the teams at the lower division, and at this point, it's not looking likely that they're going to make it to the major. At this point, they're fighting for their lives in this upper division. If they finish bottom 2, they get relegated, but for them, it's they got to win these series, and starting off by beating against Cool Guys is a good start for them. We'll have to see if it goes in for Cool Guys. This is looking like a Hellbear Smashers Part 2 of last season, where Hellbear Smashers went completely winless in this incredibly tough and incredibly tight upper division in Western Europe. Following down the same day, we had OG versus Nigma, and to this point, this was when Team Nigma was still going through their struggles. They could still be going through their struggles. They would have some highlights later on, but OG, again, looking very surprisingly good. Again, I say surprisingly just because of how young and fresh this roster is. It has been such a breath of fresh air to see just how well these guys have been playing together. I was really hoping that they would get off to a good start, but I wasn't expecting it whatsoever. And again, they just looked dominant in the series against Nigma. And in this one, this was the first series that Nigma had Miracle back, and it looked pretty underwhelming. And I made a video on Nigma yesterday. If you haven't seen that, check it out. It's linked in the description. I'll have it linked at the end of the video as well. But Nigma just kind of hasn't looked like themselves, and it doesn't feel like any of the players are necessarily not playing well enough. It really feels like more of a drafting thing. It feels like they're just completely out of touch with the current meta, and it's something that I talked more about in my video, so if you feel free to if you want to check that out, feel free to. There was a bunch of people having a bunch of discussions in the comments, but yeah. Following that, on December 15th, we then had Liquid versus Tundra, and again, Tundra having a good start, looking like one of the best teams. Well, Liquid also is looking like one of the best teams. This was a complete clash. I think Tundra was maybe relying on their Visage pick a little bit too much. They picked it up in both of these games. It didn't really look the best. And yeah, Liquid, again, looking really good. They've already secured themselves a spot at the major. It's just a matter of where they end up going, whether that be into the group stage or the main stage. It's possible that they make it to the wildcard stage, get knocked down to third or fourth in the division, but it's very unlikely unless there's a big tiebreaker. Following that, on the 18th, we had Team Tickles versus Alliance. Again, Team Tickles showing that they're able to win the matches that they need to be winning. They're getting those wins over some of the lower tier teams in the division, and Alliance kind of continuing to struggle. We knew that this was going to be happening a little bit. Alliance is a team that I think in the last tour really overperformed and kind of had all these struggles looming in the background this whole time, hence their very lukewarm results at both of the majors last year and at TI. But they make the changes. I really like the changes, like I had mentioned in my prediction video, but it just feels like the team just isn't really up to par to what the rest of the teams in this division are doing. So again, it's going to be crucial for them to win their next few series, especially the one against Team Nigma, who is the other team near the bottom of the division with them, if they want to avoid relegation. Following that, speaking of, we have Team Nigma versus Team Secret, and this was a complete flick of the switch for Team Nigma. Throughout this past week of DPC Dota, there was also the OGA Dota pit going on for Western Europe and Eastern Europe, where we saw Team Nigma playing. They, of course, won their first series against Alliance, which, if you're a Nigma fan, is a good sign because they have yet to play against Alliance in the DPC, but if that's any telling, then Nigma should have a pretty good time. But it felt like every single time that Nigma lost in that tournament, they would end up copying the team that beat them's draft, and they just weren't really able to execute it all that well. That was until they lost to Tundra, when they copied Tundra's draft and used it in this series against Team Secret. The first picked Bane and Queen of Pain. Now, they did run the Queen of Pain carry, and it actually looks surprisingly good, and they snatched this win. And again, this could just be because Team Nigma is kind of snapping back into their old form, but it also could be that just Team Secret has been really unreliable, and it just depends on the day with what team you're going to be getting for Team Secret. And yeah, I think only time will help Team Secret at this point. I don't know if they're going to make it to the first major. They've already got 3 losses so far, but we'll have to see. Following that, to end things off, we had OG versus Cool Guys. Cool Guys showing that their series, even though they are 0-4 to this point, are not just free wins for some of the best teams in this division. OG had to work for this one. This one goes the distance. It was a very entertaining series. OG does come away with the win. They are getting that step closer to the major. And Cool Guys, again, they're 0-4, but they're not necessarily an easy win at this point. And finally, to end things off before our winter break, we had Team Liquid taking on Team Secret, and this was a very, very close and entertaining series. If you happen to want to check out any of these series, I'd recommend that one. Every single game was pretty long, pretty back and forth. You really didn't know who was going to win at any point in the game. And yeah, all around very close. Team Secret looked good, but again, Team Liquid just kind of looked like they had the edge. I know that Insania's interview after the game too, he kind of mentioned that having Matu and Zai on their team really helped with getting the edge over Secret in the drafting phase, which is something that Team Liquid notably struggled with in the past. So yeah, Team Liquid, they're looking like the clear front runner for this division. It's also notable that the 2 teams that Team Liquid has yet to play so far are the 2 teams at the bottom of the division, Nigma and Alliance. Now, again, those aren't necessarily free wins. Nigma looked really good in their series against Secret, and Alliance has had some bright moments, but yeah, it looks like Team Liquid is likely going to be the first place one to finish in this division. Speaking of which, taking a look at the standings now, again, Team Liquid in the top 5-0 start so far. They have clinched their spot to the major so far. Again, we don't know where they're going to be ending up, whether that be wildcard, group stage, or main stage, but they are going to be attending. We then have OG and Team Tickles both tied at the top in second place with a 3-1 record. Again, Team Tickles 3-1, beating the teams that they need to beat, some of the weaker teams, yes, but they're getting those wins nonetheless. And the series that they lost was against the top team of the division, Team Liquid. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Team Tickles does against other teams like Secret, Tundra, and OG. They have yet to play against those teams, and when they do, we'll get to see just how good this stack really is. Following that, we have Tundra dropping 3 spots. They were, of course, tied for first place last week, but going 0-2 in the past 2 weeks. They dropped down to 4th place with a 2-2 record so far. So again, they got off to a hot start, kind of hit a brick wall there. They're hoping for a bounce back a little bit. They were really dominating the stats portion of my board the last time I did this. Following that, we had Team Seeker dropping 1 spot from 4th place with a 2-3 record. They end up going, I believe they went 1-2 on the week. Yep, they went 1-2. Well, in the past 2 weeks, I should say. We have Alliance and Team Nigma staying in the same spot at 6th place, 1-3 each. And then finally, at the bottom of the division, we have Cool Guys, who is 0-4. Definitely, things are looking rough for Cool Guys. It's very unlikely that they get enough wins to stay in this division, which should hover between 2 and 3 wins at least. But with only 3 series left, that feels very unlikely for Cool Guys. Taking a look at some stats now, there were 39 matches played in total throughout this entire division since the start of the tour, 15 of which were wins on the Radiant side, 24 on the Dire. For first pick, there were 16 wins and 23 on the Dire. Pretty much every single game has been your either first pick on Radiant or your last pick on Dire, besides one game. Every single game has been that orientation except for that one. That's the one difference there between the Radiant win rate and the first and last pick win rate. For top heroes of the region, Mirana actually makes a surprising appearance, going 4-0 so far. We saw a little bit of her in the Team Liquid versus Team Secret series yesterday. It looks pretty solid. It was more surprising though because it's not a hero that we're seeing very much of at all. It's not a hero that's being banned a lot like some of these other ones, like OD and Nyx Assassin, who are 5-1 each. OD is one that kind of caught me off guard. Teams were picking it quite early on, and it looked really good all of a sudden. The hero has the win rate to back it up as well. And Razor, 9-2. Again, Razor has had a very good showing. His playstyle generally fits the meta a lot, especially with, the first item, BKB into Refresher. It fits the meta very, very well, which is, of course, the BKB meta, which is something I talked about more in my video I made yesterday as well. And narrowly missing this list for top heroes of the region, we have, of course, Bane, who on 18 games has 14 wins. Very prominent hero, has been showing up quite a lot in almost half of the games and has a very, very high win rate. For worst heroes, we have Lion, who is 0-6. We have Hoodwink, who is 0-5. And then we have Luna, who is 1-9. And also, 2 heroes narrowly escaping this list. We have Io, who is 1-8. Io has been contested in all but one game in this entire division throughout the start of the tour. And the hero has a 11% win rate. It has been pretty miserable for Io, and yet it's contested so often. Even Insania yesterday, again, calling back to that interview they had with him after their match against Secret, thought that the Io was a bit of a bait and was fortunate when Team Secret snatched him in Game 3. Another hero missing this list, Puck, 1-6. A lot of these heroes showing up on this list are heroes that Team Nigma notably has been picking a lot. Luna, Puck, and Io. They have all picked numerous times, or maybe not numerous times, but one each. Lion as well, they've picked. For most banned, we have Io with 29. Again, he has been contested in all but one game. We have Invoker with 26. That hero is very, very strong right now. And Beastmaster with 22, who notably does not even have the best win rate in this region, but still fits the meta very nicely with his BKB piercing stun as his ultimate and just the raw pushing power with the Helm of the Overlord build. For top teams right now, Tundra still leads the way despite their slow week. Things kind of come down to earth a little bit. Their stats last week were absolutely ridiculous. They have a 24.53 GPM leading the way, but not by much. OG is only 9 GPM behind with 24.44, and then Liquid with 23.53. For top XPM, Tundra still leads the way again, just showing just how dominant their first week was. They have a 3,083 XPM. OG has a 29.51, and Liquid with a 27.91. Finally, for KDA, OG leads the way in a very OG fashion. OG is known as a team that has been very fight first, farm later, which is also very suitable for this meta. 4.68 for the KDA, 4.44 for Tundra, so not far behind. And then Tickles with 4.38, so Tickles actually showing up on this leaderboard here. Finally, for top players, for top GPM, we actually have Nisha for Team Secret, which is pretty surprising considering the team has had very little success so far, or I should say very little sustained success. Again, they're 2-3 so far, and their odds of making the major are getting slimmer and slimmer, and if they do, they will be in the wildcard stage. We'll have to see how it goes. We then have Yuragi from OG with a 698 and Miracle with 661. Now, of course, Miracle has only played 2 series, so his sample size is a little bit smaller, so take it with a grain of salt. But notably, in the series that they did win, he looked very, very prominent in the mid lane. For top XPM, we have Skeeter with 721, 9 with 720, and Yuragi with 712. So if you recall my last review I did for Western Europe, the entire list for top XPM and top KDA were all Tundra players. And now some more players have started to seep in from some other teams, with Tundra kind of slipping down the ranks a little bit. We then have top KDA. Yuragi leads the way with an 11.22, which is absurd. You'd think that that's not going to be a sustainable KDA, but they've already played 4 series so far, including a series that they've lost. He's looked really, really good in every single one of those series. Leading the way again from OG, we have BZM with 9.44 and Mickey from Team Liquid with a 7.63. He has looked very good in that mid role. Of course, we knew that Team Liquid was one of those teams that was very versatile with their roles. They were easily able to swap things around, and Mickey has looked right at home in that mid lane. Surprised we haven't seen any Lone Druid yet, although I guess it's a little bit less versatile now that Koifa isn't playing for them either. They used to have 2 Lone Druid players, which is not something you can talk very much about. But overall, it's been a really, really entertaining first half of the tour. I am really curious to see who ends up getting relegated, but more importantly, I'm really interested to see who actually makes it to the first major. Again, Team Tickles has been a real surprise, and sure, you may say that they haven't played some of the toughest teams in the region yet, but they are getting the wins that they need to be getting, and they have stayed competitive against the teams that they have been tougher, like Team Liquid. That was by no means a free series for them whatsoever. And for Team Nigma and Alliance, it's looking very likely that one of those two teams will be ending up getting relegated along with Cool Guys, unless Team Secret manages to slip down the ranks even further. And wouldn't that be crazy seeing one of those three teams in the lower division? It's very likely that we see at least one of them. So, now moving on to the lower division, where again we have quite a few matches because it's been such a long time. Starting off on December 11th, we had Chicken Fighters facing off against Into the Breach. Very good showing from Chicken Fighters, which I've been very happy to see, especially since in the last tour, they finished bottom 2 in the lower division, so they got relegated out of the DPC. They come back in through close qualifiers, and now they're the top team in the division so far. It's been a real turnaround, and wouldn't it be funny seeing them in the upper division for the next tour? Hopefully their fate would lie a little bit better than the current Cool Guys or the former Hellbear Smashers, but regardless, making it to the upper division Western Europe is good experience nonetheless. Following that, on December 13th, we had Brame taking on Chillax. They win that 1-2-1. Chillax, again, another one of those teams coming through the close qualifiers. They have looked pretty hit or miss now and then, but in this series, they did look pretty competitive against Brame, who I think should be one of the top 2 teams in this division. They, of course, did get relegated in the last tour, but they did look really competitive, and they have been sticking together and practicing a lot since then. And again, they have been one of the more impressive teams in this lower division. Following that, we have Ghost Frogs taking on No Bounty Hunter, who has had a pretty rough go of it this season. No Bounty Hunter hasn't exactly looked very engaged or very competitive with a lot of these teams, even in this lower division. And with their 0-4 start to the season, it's looking very likely that these guys will not be in the DPC next tour unless they make it in through those open qualifiers, just like Chicken Fighters. But yeah, all around good series for Ghost Frogs, a team that hasn't necessarily been doing the best, but they do get the win that they needed to against the other team near the bottom of the division, which is super important for them. For teams near the bottom, it's less important that they're able to beat the best teams, just as long as they're able to beat the other teams that are close to them in the standings. Following that, on December 15th, we have Entity versus Into the Breach. Entity, another team that has looked very solid in this lower division. They have had a few slip-ups now and then, but overall, they've looked like one of the better teams, and they are very much in the race for making it in that top 2 slot right now. It's looking like the 3 real contenders right now are Chicken Fighters, Entity, and Brame, but of course, only 2 of those teams are going to make it. Following that, we had later that day Chicken Fighters taking on Brame. Again, a head-to-head match of some of the top teams in this division, and Chicken Fighters actually comes away with the win. This is Brame's first loss of the season, and Chicken Fighters 4-0 so far. So very impressive so far for them, and again, looking like one of the top contenders for that upper division. Following that, on December 18th, we then had the forfeit from No Bounty Hunter in their series against Chillax. This was due to a roster issue. It didn't seem like they were actually going to be able to fill their roster, whether that be because one of their players wasn't able to show up and they couldn't find a sub, or they just had issues with the sub, or something like that. Regardless, No Bounty Hunter season continues to go from bad to worse with this one, as they don't even get a chance in this series. And Chillax, they'll take the free win. Again, they're one of the teams that's kind of struggling a little bit to get ahead, so having this free series win is going to be very huge for them when it comes to avoiding relegation. On December 20th, we have Team Bald versus Ghost Frogs. Team Bald continue to look very impressive, all things considered. By that, I mean the fact that they do not scrim, they do not have a coach, they don't practice or take themselves too seriously, but they're continuing to put up quite impressive numbers in this lower division. Now, they're not looking like one of the top teams, but they're also not looking like one of the worst teams in this division. So, all around, fun team to watch. Great series from them. It was a close series, 2-1 overall. But yeah, they come away with the win. And finally, ending things off before we head into our break, we have Entity taking on Chillax. Entity comes away with the win. Again, Chillax, a team kind of struggling a little bit to get ahead. And Entity looking like one of the better teams in this division. Now looking at the standings now, staying in first place as they were in my last review, we have Chicken Fighters, who has still gone winless to this point. I mean, still got undefeated to this point. God, if they were winless, they wouldn't be first place. We then have Entity moving up 1 spot. They are now 4-1. They actually go 2-0 in this past 2 weeks, so they have yet to lose a series since that first little start. And then have Brame dropping down 2 spots. They were tied for first place in my first review. Since then, they have split their 2 series that they've played 1-1. So you know, not terrible, but they are starting to kind of slip behind some of the teams in this race. It's going to be very, very important to them that they need to win the next few series. I don't think they can really afford to lose any more series, especially with how good these other two teams in this division have been looking. Following that, we have Bald, who in the past 2 weeks has only played one series. That was against Ghost Frogs. They win that one, like I mentioned. So they go 1-0 on the week to go with a 2-2 record. We then have Chillax, who slips down to 2-3 after playing 3 series. They go 1-2 in them. That only win coming from a forfeit, like I mentioned. But again, it's a win that they'll take and they'll very much need. Ghost Frogs moves up 1 spot. They go 1-1 on the week, with their only win being against No Bounty Hunter. We then have Into the Breach dropping down 2 spots. They are 1-3 at the moment. They go 0-2 in their past 2 series in these past 2 weeks. And then finally, No Bounty Hunter 0-4 to this point. Things, like I mentioned, just going from bad to worse for No Bounty Hunter, and they're looking like the equivalent of Cool Guys in the upper division, where they're just kind of getting beat on by a bunch of teams. Not necessarily easy wins, I will say. I think Cool Guys has put up a lot more of a fight than No Bounty Hunter, but regardless, their season is looking a little bit more hopeless. Taking a look at some stats now, there have been 38 games in total. On Radiant, they have won 23 of them, and Dire has won 14. Now, you will notice that those two numbers do not amount to 38. That is because on Dota Buff, they actually have a match missing, and I haven't actually gone through and tried to figure out which one it was. I might do that for my next video. We'll see. But for now, in general, Radiant has been the better side. And for first and last pick, it's actually 19-18, so very close, pretty much 50% win rate there, no real difference, which is polar opposite to the upper division, where last pick has been really, really crucial. I think that Radiant is still the better side, but in general, it feels like last pick is just much better than Radiant is over Dire. So, for top heroes, Disruptor, 7-1 so far. Kind of a hero that has been picked up in a few different regions. I know the hero was quite popular in South America as well, kind of getting picked up in a bunch of different places, and has been pretty hit or miss. In some regions, the hero is 1-7, and in some, it is 7-1. Looked very good so far in Western Europe. We then have Batrider, who is 3-0 so far, so pretty small sample size, but when the hero does get picked, it has looked very good. And Spirit Breaker, one of the heroes of the patch for sure, is 11-5 so far. Quite impressive. For worst heroes, we have Treant Protector, 0-5. Again, another hero that's been pretty popular in some other regions, kind of popping up all over the place. Has not had the same success as some other heroes in Western Europe, at least in the lower division. Phantom Assassin is 1-4 so far, which is a little bit surprising because it feels like she really fits the current meta very well. She's a very physical-based hero, although she does struggle in lane, which I think is a pretty big part as to why she doesn't fit the meta very well. It is a very, very fast-paced meta. It is a first item BKB type meta. And if you're not able to keep up there, then things are a little bit tough. And it feels like Phantom Assassin is just one of those heroes that is kind of falling behind a little bit. We then have Dark Willow, who is 2-7 so far on the season. And narrowly missing this list, we actually have Weaver, who is 2-6. Again, one of the heroes of the patch for sure. One of the most banned heroes in pretty much every single region, every single division. Has a pretty awful win rate in both the upper division and the lower division. The hero is 4-7 in Western Europe in the upper division. Now looking at the most banned heroes in the lower division, we have Weaver with 26. Again, one of the most contested heroes of the region. Doesn't really have the win rate to back it up. Io with 25, another hero that in the upper division specifically has a pretty awful win rate. And Medusa with 21, which is one that really caught me off guard. I hadn't exactly noticed just how often Medusa was actually getting banned, but yeah, she has showed up quite a bit. Definitely a shocker for me, especially because the hero missing this list just by 1 ban, that being Invoker with 20 bans total. That means in both divisions together, Invoker has 46 bans, which is pretty ridiculous. Looking at the top teams for GPM, Chicken Fighter leads the way in every single category. They have a 23.81 GPM. Following that, we have Brain with 21.94 and Entity with 21.59. For XPM, again, Chicken Fighter's leading the way, 28.74, Entity with 27.27, and Ghost Frogs with 26.68. And for KDA, Chicken Fighters 4.90, Entity with 4.57, and finally Brain with 4.07. Now, keep in mind for the Chicken Fighter stats, those might be a little bit inflated because for some reason on Dota Buff, they included all of the qualifier stats with the actual division stats. So some of the fact that Chicken Fighters played in those open qualifiers means that their stats could be a little bit inflated. But regardless, they're still quite impressive numbers. For top players, we have Aqua leading the way, he of course being from Chicken Fighters with a 6.92. We have Shad from Breach and Ulnit from Ghost Frogs with a 6.32. For XPM, we have Aqua again leading the way with 6.34. We then have Stormer with 7.22 from Entity. We then have Boronesia from Chicken Fighters with 7.21. For top KDA, Stormer leads the way with 8.88. He has had a very, very good start to the season so far. Chris Dallas with 8.68 from Entity, and finally Bora Nisha again from Chicken Fighters, coming in with an 8.28. So yeah, that's been it. That's my review of the first 3 weeks of the DPC so far in Western Europe, both upper division and lower division. We are now at the halfway point, and things have been shaken up quite a lot. A lot of very unexpected factors have been taking place in both the upper and lower division so far, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Do you guys think that Nigma or Alliance end up getting relegated? Does Team Secret lose their next 2 series and end up getting relegated? One of these big name teams is going to get knocked down to the lower division. I'm really interested to hear who you guys think it will be. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to check in the next couple days for some more uploads. Again, I'm going to be trying to upload as much as possible, but because it is Christmas break, it is going to be a little bit tough. But regardless, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.